Is there a compassion crisis? How do we find kindness in a harsh world? Hello, my name is Paul Harvey and I am a midlife coach, and you are listening to a life, passion and business shortcast. Now, over the last few years, I have spoken to hundreds of people and I've discovered that our story is everything, because what we do, feel or experience is based on the stories that we tell ourselves. This shortcast is a bite-sized episode to explore the ingredients of a good life. We bring out the thoughts, tips and tools so you can try them on for size. So let's explore and see what is possible. Have you noticed there's a growing lack of compassion in the world? There is a palpable harshness in our media, our politics and our society that seems to be intensifying. If you caught my show last week, you heard me discussing how negative news travels faster, creating the impression that things are worse than they actually are. But today I want to explore something different, not just the perception of negativity, but the actual shift in how we treat each other. There's a compassion deficit. Over the last few months, perhaps longer, I've observed a distinct decline in compassion, particularly for those who are vulnerable, marginalised, or simply different from ourselves. In politics and corporate culture, there seems to be an increasing need to demonstrate toughness in the face of what's perceived weakness. Leaders boast about making tough decisions and often amount to withdrawing support from those who need it most. While media attention and political priorities may shift, as suffering continues for those caught in the crosshairs of these cultural shifts, plus conflict, plus wars. Let's start with a clear definition. Compassion is the recognition of someone else's pain coupled with a desire to relieve it. It's not just about feeling sorry for someone, it's about being moved to action. And notably, compassion forms the fundamental tenet of virtually all spiritual beliefs and religious traditions throughout human history. There is a power in compassion. I recently read an article in The Guardian about how compassion actually changed the course of Western civilization. In 166 CE, the Antonine Plague was decimating the Roman Empire. It had been raging for 2 decades, and the standard practice was brutal. Those who contracted the disease were cast out of their homes by their families and left to die alone in the streets. It was the early Christians who stepped forward, risking their lives to care for these abandoned people, showing love and compassion where others showed fear and rejection. This compassionate response stood in stark contrast to the vengeful gods of the Greco-Roman Parthenon. Historians now believe that this demonstration of radical compassion was a key factor in Rome's eventual conversion to Christianity. I'll include a reference to this historical event in the show notes for those that are interested to learn more. But there's a personal impact here. The point is I'm making is that compassion has the power to change not just the individual, but lives of entire societies. It can shift political landscapes, transform cultural values. But here's my concern. What happens to us as the observers of this growing harshness when compassion becomes devalued? We've seen it before. It happened in Nazi Germany. Could you find yourself becoming less compassionate towards others or even towards yourself? In my coaching practice, I emphasize kindness, self-kindness and self-compassion because we must give ourselves grace in this demanding world. My fear is that as our society turns away from compassion and becomes pointing fingers at others, devaluing certain people and cultures, that finger eventually points back at us. There's a need, isn't there? There's this kind of like duality in, all right, I can't work out what I want to say here, the word of it really, but it's this comparison between toxic toughness and self-compassion. There's a macho behavior, particularly prevalent in the fitness culture, which often demands that we man up and get tough with ourselves. And we see it in the sales and business culture. And yes, discipline has its place, but true discipline comes from a foundation of self-respect and self-love, not self-punishment. When we are aggressive with ourselves, we're trying to motivate through fear. Now, while fear-based motivation will work on some level, it is a short-term result. It never leads to sustainable excellence because fear is fundamentally about shutting down, not opening up. I always motivate myself better with a meaningful reward rather than with a threat of punishment. I don't do well when being deprived of something. And this brings me to this point, a vital point that we talk about a lot on the podcast, is that of self-care. I'm convinced that carving out a unique piece of time for yourself each day is essential. It isn't selfish, it's necessary. Creating rituals that nourish you rather than deplete you ensure that there's always time for activities and practices that build you up. These are the things that make you a better human. These are the things that give you the resources to support other people. In a world that seems increasingly indifferent to suffering, your commitment to compassion, both for others and for yourself, becomes not just a personal practice, but an act of resistance against the prevailing cultural tide. Let's be the change we wish to see. Let's demonstrate through our actions that compassion isn't weakness, it is ultimate strength. So what acts of compassion have you witnessed recently? How do you practice self-compassion in your daily life? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Anyway, until next time, if you've enjoyed this conversation and found it useful, please share it with a friend. If you want to say something to it, please add a comment to it or get in touch with me, because I would love to hear your thoughts on this subject. If you like this podcast, give us some stars, because that always makes us feel good. Check out the podcast website and find the resources there, particularly focus coaching, because that helps you get to where you want to be. And we'll discuss compassion on that one too. And as always, thank you so much for your time and attention. I will catch you next time. All the best.